Good evening. How are you? Have you had your supper? How was it? I had mine alone tonight. Pastor Anne is in Kampala and won't be back until the morning. Tonight is Easter time, and we know how important Easter is because we get holidays for it, so it must be really big. When I was a young guy, early teenager, late before that, I was an altar boy in a Catholic church. That's where I grew up. And this night, this Thursday before Easter, Holy Thursday it was called in the Catholic Church, was such a special time. And it really was. Easter didn't begin on Friday. Easter began on Thursday for us. It's when we remember what has become known as the Last Supper. And heading into that, Jesus said to his disciples, the hour has come when I'm going to be crucified and killed. He knew that. He also knew that of those 12 people who'd been travelling around with him for 3 years, ministering all over the country, that one of them was actually going to turn against him and hand him over to the Jewish authorities. And so, yes, they gathered for supper, but I'm sure Jesus had quite a heavy heart as they gathered. The supper was a special one for them as well because it was the beginning of the feast of the Passover. Now, the Passover was remembering what had happened in Egypt when Moses had been sent to Egypt by God to bring the Israelites out of captivity in Egypt. And he'd gone to Pharaoh, and God had done all of these amazing plagues to get Pharaoh to let the people go. But it wasn't until this last one, which was a plague of death for firstborns. And the Passover is recognizing that all of the Israelites were told to get a lamb, kill the lamb, put the blood of that lamb on the door frames of their houses. So the angel would see that there and pass over and not kill the child in that house. And so the night came, and the vengeful angel came and killed all the firstborn children in Egypt. But those with the blood of the lamb smeared on their door frames, they were passed over. The angel did not go there and kill those babies or those children. And so it was a great celebration for the Jews. So during the supper, Jesus initiated what we call Holy Communion. He broke bread, which was representing the breaking of his body that was about to come, and he gave them a cup to drink of wine representing the blood that was going to be poured out by him. And in doing those things, he said, remember, do this in remembering me. And he wasn't just telling those 12 guys there to remember. He was saying, do this in remembrance for me forever. So, and that's why we celebrate communion, and why tomorrow during the service we'll be celebrating Holy Communion, and we'll be remembering that sacrifice that Jesus made. Now, in John's Gospel, it doesn't tell us much about that part of the story, but it has another part that we don't get in the other three Gospels, and that is that after supper, John tells us Jesus got down on the floor and washed his disciples' feet. He took off his garments, just grabbed a towel and a basin, and he went around, and one by one he washed the disciples' feet. Now, back in my Catholic church days, that would happen at the end of the Mass on Thursday night, that the priest would take off his garments and get a towel and a basin and a jug of water, and he would go around and he would wash the feet of 12 men in the church, and they would have been selected. And I remember one year my dad was one of those 12. And that was kind of fun, but it wasn't particularly significant to me. It became more significant to me when I actually did that with the group that I was leading here in Wairaka at one Easter where we gathered, and I, along with Pastor Anne, we got down and we went around the circle with basins and we washed the feet of each of the people in the group. And that was a really significant thing to do. But the time when it had most impact on me was in 2015. We were in the USA, in Tennessee. We'd been invited to go there by a church that was there, and our pastor of the time from here in Uganda was also in the group. He was there. And the pastor from Tennessee led us through a devotion one afternoon, and he dramatized it all. And so he got to this part of the story of Jesus washing the disciples' feet, and he asked some of us to play certain roles. So I got chosen to be Peter, and Pastor Robert, my pastor, he was chosen to be Jesus. Now, we didn't do this with water and basin or anything like that, but we did it with, I took off my shoes, took off my socks. Pastor Robert got down on the floor and he massaged my feet. Now, I can tell you that was one of the very most humbling experiences I've ever had, and it really brought home to me the significance of this act that Jesus did where he washed his disciples' feet. So what was the significance? Why did Jesus do that? John 13 verse 13 says, "You call me teacher and Lord, and you say, well, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you should do as I have done to you." So Jesus did that as an example to the disciples and to us, that as leaders, we must serve our people. Yeah. And that's a very humbling thing, to get down and wash someone else's feet. That's a real act of service. Later on in that same chapter, in verse 34 and 35, Jesus gave a new commandment. It says, "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another. As I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this, all will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. This is a new commandment for a new covenant." Jesus said the cup of wine that they were drinking was the blood of the new covenant. No longer did we have to go by the law to have relationship with God, but Jesus was instituting a new covenant. He was commanding us to love one another, to love our families, to love our friends, to love our fellow Christians, to love the people who don't know him, to love the Muslims and the Hindus and the Buddhists and all of those other people of other religions, and to love our enemies, those who want to attack us. That's the commandment that he gave, coming from what he was about to do and what he represented during the supper, but what was about to happen to him. Now, those early Holy Thursday Masses I served at were very, very symbolic. They recreated that night when Jesus had that final meal with his disciples. There was the Holy Communion, there was the washing of the feet. And afterwards, Jesus went out into the darkness to pray, went out to the mountain to pray in the darkness. And in the church, in the Catholic Church, at the end of that service, everything is stripped away. So all of the decorations, all of the candles, all of the flowers, all of the altar clothes, all of those things are all taken away. I remember that vividly because as an altar boy, I would go, you would put the candle out, and the candles are on great big high candelabras that meant the candle was way above me. I would be carrying this heavy wooden candelabra, and wax. I would be absolutely covered in wax. My clothes would just get wax all over them because there was still lots of molten wax there. But it was a real stripping back. All the flowers were taken away, and it was suddenly the church, the sanctuary was bare. There was just the wooden altar, table, nothing else. Everything else was gone. It was kind of representing that darkness that Jesus was going into, and the darkness that was over the world because of his death that was coming. The good news was it all came back on Sunday. Everything was restored. So tonight, Thursday, we remember how the suffering for Jesus became real and imminent. His prayer was for God to take it from him if that was possible, but that he would do it. He did it. He went through it for us. He was crucified for us. He was killed for us. And he was killed for all of those people that don't know about it. What a shame that people don't know this story that we know and don't know what Jesus has done for us. So tomorrow we have a holiday. The Good Friday service at Worship Harvest is at 4 p.m. So we've got all morning and a good part of the afternoon where we could go out and tell that story to people. We could go out and share this story that people don't know and invite them to receive Jesus, to receive that story as their story. So I'd encourage you tomorrow, get a couple of friends together, go out and just tell people, ask them, do you know what today is, Good Friday? What's that celebrating? What's that remembering? And then tell them the story. Tell them your story, Jesus' story, and invite them to make it their story. Amen. Have a good night's sleep and be all fired up to go out tomorrow and do just that. God bless you.